starts with a fresh shot of espresso. Bold, rich, pulled just right. Then comes the milk, steamed smooth, creamy, and balanced. The perfect latte is not rushed. It is crafted, one cup at a time. Your perfect latte is ready. Coffee first, then everything else.
Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm DJ Moises, and today's conversation is brought to us by Coffee First. What does Vice President Sara Duterte's 6-point jump in the latest Pulse Asia survey really mean? Today we look deeper and think better. The latest Pulse Asia survey shows the Vice President strengthening her position in the potential 2028 presidential race, climbing from 43% in the first quarter to 49% in the second quarter. Former Vice President and Mayor Leni Robredo remains in second place at 26%, while Senator Raffy Tulfo slips to 14%. The Pulse Asia interview were conducted from June 28 to July 3, 2026, during one of the most politically charged periods of the year. On May 11, 2026, the House of Representatives voted to impeach Vice President Sara Duterte, while Senator Alan Peter Cayetano was elected Senate President. But 2 days later, the attempted arrest of Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa inside the Senate complex sparked the Senate siege. On June 17, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian was elected Senate President, ending the leadership crisis. And on July 6, the Senate convened as an impeachment court and formally began the trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. Why did Vice President Sara Duterte gain 6 points despite shifting political alliances and while facing impeachment instead of losing ground? Did this event in fact strengthen her position heading into the 2028 presidential race? Let's look deeper and think better. So I think I'll have to ask the second question even more clearly. No? So kay murag, when the events unfolded leading to when the surveys were made, it actually looked like the Vice President was losing ground. No? So ang question ani among the many is, in spite of what happened, did these events even ended up strengthening her position as a preferred presidential candidate in 2028? So those are the things that we will discuss today. So as mentioned in the intro, with the release of the latest Pulse Asia survey, it actually showed that the Vice President increased the preference for the Vice President as presidential candidate in 2028 increased by 6 percentage points in spite of all the events that happened in the Senate, in the House, leading to the particular period in which the survey was conducted by Pulse Asia. If we recall, nagsugod ang survey, di ba? Nagsugod ang survey July 3. So leading to that, mao ni ang mga events in a nutshell that could have shown nga maglisod ang Vice President, because May 11, that was when she was impeached by the House of Representatives by an overwhelming vote of 257 in favor, 25 against, and then 9 ang nag-abstain. On that same day, if we recall, that was when Bato de la Rosa showed up in the Senate, and then it led to the election of Senator Alan Peter Cayetano as Senate President. So some people actually had negative impression about Senator Bato suddenly showing up in the Senate. And then that led, in fact, to the crisis or even the siege in the Senate, which people thought may have also negatively impact the Vice President. The Dutertes in general, because the majority at that time, including Senator Bato de la Rosa, was were viewed, no, as an ally of the as allies of the Duterte. Now, the other thing also that transpired after that, Senator Cheese Escudero, nitabok siya from the majority to the minority, and that led to the 12 votes that elected Sherwin Gatchalian as Speaker, as Senate President pro tempore. No? So, and then, eventually, nitabok na pod si Joel Villanueva from the minority to the majority, so creating a 13 votes, no, that led to Senate President Win Gatchalian's election. So in a nutshell, ang katong ni transpire is the Vice President was impeached by overwhelming vote in the House, and then naiduha ka nabok nga senators, making the majority the minority and creating a new majority that led to the election of Sherwin Gatchalian, no? And this also led to Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, which is perceived to be an ally of the Duterte, no longer the Senate President when upon the start of the impeachment. So some observers thought that mura na magni-shift ang political alliances away from the Duterte. And then if we recall also, June 1, which is just days before the start of the Pulse Asia survey, this was also when Senator Jinggoy Estrada, no, was detained for a non-bailable offense, which is actually plunder, no? And then July 6, which is already within the survey period, this was also Senator Rodante Marcoleta was also detained with another non-bailable offense, which is still kanang plunder. And this was also katong the time that former Congressman Mike Defensor, who was also kanang a supporter of the Maleta Boys, no, and also perceived to be an ally of the Duterte, was also detained as well, no. So makita nato na murag it looked like the momentum was already moving away from the Dutertes, and in that case the Vice President. But instead of hurting the Vice President's preferential rank among the voters as far as the Pulse Asia survey is concerned, the period, in fact, did not really make a dent on her popularity. In fact, after those instances, the survey would still show that she is leading among the preferred presidential candidates in 2028. And not only that, nisaka pa gyud ang iya ang preference by 6 percentage points. So dili lang sila walay impact, but it turned out in spite of those, she even became stronger in the survey. Now, makita sad nato on screen nga ang the other perceived to be her opponent in the 2028 presidential race is Mayor and former Vice President Leni Robredo. And as we can see on screen, ninaog siya by 1%, no? If we look at it. So, di man kita makaingon nga, it's like she's losing ground, but at least she's just steady, while the Vice President is actually becoming stronger. And then if we look at the other perceived candidate, that's Senator Raffy Tulfo, ninaog pod si Raffy Tulfo by 5 percentage points, no? So again, if we recall, both Mayor and former Vice President Robredo and Senator Tulfo both actually said that they are not running. So things could also change, just in case they will eventually declare as candidates. But as we speak, both are either steady or losing ground, while the Vice President is even becoming stronger as far as the voter preferences are concerned, no? Leading to the 2028 presidential election. Now, what's interesting also is I will show on screen the national capital region, no? Because what we're seeing now is the national results. So let's move to the national capital region. Even in the national capital region, the vice president also is slightly becoming stronger, no? From 35 to 39. And then, former Vice President Leni Robredo also increased by 27 to 38, no? And but still, it is still the vice president who is leading, while Senator Tulfo is decreasing also in the capital region. The more And then, by the way, I'll do my analysis after, no, consolidating the two. But the more interesting numbers that we need to check is the balance of Luzon, no, which we will be showing on screen, no, because the balance of Luzon. So this is the entire Luzon except NCR. The vice president became even stronger by 15 percentage points, while the former vice president and mayor Leni Robredo declined by 13%. Now, why did I say nga kaning balance of Luzon an important number to check? Because the balance of Luzon represents roughly 56% of the Philippine electorate. So mo ni siya ang pinakadako nga block. Interestingly, Naga actually is part of this, no? And I'm not saying that Naga actually will have where the vice president and now is the mayor of Naga. I'm not saying that Naga actually has a significant number to contribute to this. But some people, Manggod, would think na if the vice president is strong in Mindanao, where Davao is, then it would have been also kanang not surprising if the vice president is popular in the balance of Luzon, because that's also, kung kang Sara ang Mindanao, it looks like this is her territory, no? But even here, the vice president is losing ground by 13 percentage points, while the vice president is even stronger at 15 percentage points, no? So this is and then as mentioned earlier, this is the largest voting bloc, no, in the country, no? And this actually showed that the vice president gained substantial preference, no, in this large voting bloc in the Philippines. So as we continue to look at the survey leading to 2028, I would suggest that this is one part of the region that we need to also take a closer look, no? And not necessarily because we support whichever candidates, but at least we know where our candidates would stand as far as voting preference, no? Now, in the Visayas, which is also said to be the voting base also, no, of the vice president, there's a decline by 7 percentage points, but layo pagyud gihapon ang former vice president, no, from her. So nisaka ang former vice president by 11 percentage points. And by the way, this is worth looking at. Kay taas po ding 11 percentage points, no, while the vice president actually declined by 7 percentage points. So this is worth looking closely. But as we speak, if we look at the numbers, it's 53% still, no, in favor of Sara Duterte should she run. Once she ran in 2028, and then 27%, no, medyo katunga lang gani ang sa vice president, and Rafi Tulfo also losing ground further and just at 10%. Now in Mindanao, by the way, the Visayas represents 20% of the Philippine electorate now. And in Mindanao, which is the second highest voting bloc, no, which is at 24%. And in Mindanao, the vice president remained strong, no, coming at 87%, no, while the vice president, the former vice president and Mayor Robredo is just at 8% and Senator Tulfo at 2%. So while there's a slight decline for the vice president, but the numbers actually look steady because 87% is really like a solid voting block for her, no? So the vice president actually, if we look at it in a nutshell, she actually gained very good progress in the largest voting bloc, which is the Balance of Luzon, and she leads across all the different regions in the Philippines. Now, the other thing that's worth looking at is the next chart, because we also have here the numbers and comparison with respect to social economic classes, no? And I'm referring to class A, B, and C. I hope they will now show it on screen, no? What's interesting about this kanang voting block before I will yes, okay, you're seeing it now. The vice president, surprisingly, and I'll tell you why I use the word surprisingly, gained 24 percentage points, no, in class A, B, and C, while the former vice president and Mayor Reni Robredo decreased by 11 percentage points. And why did I say this is an interesting number? Because class ABC represents the country's upper income and upper middle class income. Gamay ra ni siya nga population, as we know, 8 to 12%. But to me, why does the number significant, in my opinion? Because these are the business owners, the senior executives, the professionals, and individuals with higher levels of formal education. So this runs counter to the impression that it's only for the lack of better word, it's only the bobo, no, who are supporting the Duterte. Because again, these are the upper middle income and upper income bracket. So that statement, after all, is not necessarily true if we look at the survey. And in fact, this is in spite of everything that happened. The vice president has had a significant jump in this particular bracket, no, by 24 percentage points, no. So small rin sila nga voting population, but it's very telling about the impression nga para ra sa bobo ang vice president, because these people are not necessarily bobo, no? They're the executives, the professionals, the entrepreneurs, and people with higher level of formal education. So that's a good number to take a look at whether we are pro vice president or we are supporting another candidate, no? Now, the other thing also that's another telling also is, let's move to class D. Mao ni sila ang the huge block of the Philippines in terms of number. Katong mga broad middle class to lower middle class segment. So we'll be showing that next, no, on screen. And so this is a large voting block. And in this particular block, it's the next. Humanata sa NCR. Humanap ta sa Balance Luzon, continue ta with sige, anyhow, no, while they're moving the charts, no. But class D, this is the larger voting block in terms of population, but this is a representation of those in the middle class and the lower segment. Sunod ana. Sara Duterte also still leads, no, in this area. And then if we move further to class E, which is already the lowest income among the households, the vice president also, while she had a 5 points decline sa class E, so that's what you're seeing on screen now, but she remains also strong at 59%, no? 59%. So what does this tell us, no, if we are to summarize na everything? The vice president is leading in all regions, and then she also has the Balance Luzon, which is the largest voting block and is perceived to be the area, no, the territoryo sa ang perceived opponent in the vice presidential race, no, si Vice President and Mayor Leni Robredo, no. And then she also leads in class ABC, small voting block, pero these are the learned ang mga bright kunuhay, no, and ang mga dato kunuhay, but she's also leading in that, which to me is a surprise. It's against the common perception. And then the other thing also is in class D and E, she also remains strong, no? Okay. Sige, so nag-error na ang file. So sige lang, let's still proceed, no? So ang question nato then, which is going back to the introduction, why did this kanang extraordinary political events, no, that happened, which is supposed to be not in favor of the Duterte or the vice president, for that matter, resulted to an even stronger support, no, for the vice president? Well, kani nga tuwang din these are just analysis. No? I will not say that this is already cast in stone, but it's very possible that the voters still think, no, even with the impeachment process going on, and it started within this period, it's possible that the voters still think that this is excessive and politically charged, and that the vice president is unfairly targeted. No, so it's possible because we've heard also nga even if kanang next week, no, they will open the financial records, but nganong siya raman, no? So there are people who's asking that, and it looks like if we look at the number, it looks like people really still thought, at least as far as those participated in the survey, believing that she was unfairly targeted, no? There are also possibilities na because she's being targeted, it further even unified her already existing base, no? Again, I'm not saying this is cast in stone nga analysis, but these are possibilities, no? Kaya nganong ni kusog naman noon siya in spite of what happened, no? And then it's also possible that when Filipinos who answered the survey, they're not necessarily following the impeachment, or they're not necessarily following the political shifting political alliances in the Senate or even in the House of Representatives, but they are just looking at their own experience, day-to-day experience, such as inflation, which is, by the way, remains high, jobs, which also remains a problem because and even threatened, no, because of the current economic condition, and then public safety, because as we know, there are also a series of crimes that are said to be happening, no. So maybe their focus is not on the impeachment, but actually on these indicators and how they are experiencing life in the day-to-day manner, no. The other thing also is it's possible that the voters continue to support the Vice President, Sara Duterte, because of the strength of the Duterte brand. And there are details of the survey which I will not bore you anymore, but because naman to yung mga parts pod on why they are picking, no, the Vice President, or why do they trust the Vice President. And a lot of the comments there, it's because of strong, whether we agree or we don't, but the Duterte brand actually is attached to strength and strong and decisive leadership, law and order, and the messaging, no, that they always have when they engage with the public is their understanding of the grassroots, no, and the experiences of everyday Filipinos, no. So maybe that's also the one that continued to strengthen, no, the Vice President in terms of voter preference. And then, so the other thing also, it's possible also that it's personality driven, which is related to the Duterte brand, no? So maybe it's also possible that the voting population is not necessarily monitoring the issue, but they are just supporting the personality or the brand. And in this case, it's the Vice President, Sara Duterte. Now, related to the other factors that I mentioned, economic indicators, it's also the cost of living, jobs, inflation, their ability to put food on the table, their ability to pay for their medical healthcare expenses. I think this is actually more practical to them. And I will have to just go a little bit on certain numbers. We will guest an economist next week, I think it's going to be Thursday of next week and we'll deal with that. But I'll just have to mention ba nga, maybe the Filipinos are not necessarily following the impeachment in general, the Philippine electorate, but they're actually just looking at how they are experiencing things as we speak, no? Because inflation actually remains high, no? So we're at 6.4%, which is above the 2.4% target, no, of the government. So mas nisaka ang presyo. But at the same time, ang growth sa economy is only at 2.8%, no? Which is slower than what we forecasted, which was 5.4%. So nagkamahal ang presyo, the economy is not expanding enough to actually generate opportunities for people to afford the rising prices, no? So that's how I can best explain it in a nutshell. So the cost of living is growing, but our ability to spend is not growing fast enough, no? Because opportunities, the economy is not expanding fast enough to create those opportunities. So if ato pa yun siyang i-further translate to everyday Filipinos, meaning nagkamahal ang grocery, nagkamahal ang rice, nagkamahal ang meat, ang vegetables, and other kanang things that we need on a day-to-day basis, naglisod sad ang transportation, no? In fact, when on my way here, I was listening to another news outlet, kanang mga app hailing, no, kanang mga ginahail na kanang applications, no, like or transportation, no, I forgot the exact term, but I'm referring to kaning mga Grabs and the Move It, kanang lisod gid ang ila ang situation given the rising fuel prices, no, nga it would actually take for them to have at least 16 hours in a day to work or to drive, no, just for them to be able to reach, no, profitability. That's 16 hours, so longer time, no? And some of them would even just sleep, no? So apil ni mga Move It, so they will just sleep on where they are. Kaya kung muuli pa sila, that's another transportation cost. Plus, of course, we've also heard about the crimes also against certain kanang motorcycle drivers, no? So these are sad times also for the transportation sector because of higher fuel prices, etc. And then there are also questions already that salaries are no longer enough to fund for this. So if we will have more we will discuss the economy further on Thursday of next week, and please join us in those conversations. But at least now we have an idea na maybe people are not following the impeachment or the change in Senate leadership, but they are just feeling all these, no? And in fact, I will have to add, that's why we also hear kanang observations na sa kadaghang problema sa Pilipinas, nganong kanigid ang giuna. Maybe that's also influencing the stronger voting preference for the vice president, no? So because that's why even if regardless of the incidents that happened in the House and in the Senate, which should have been against her, she remained to be strong. Now, before I'll close this, I hope kanang dili mo error ang katong last two files, but this is on the kanang approval rating, no? And if in case we will not see it on the screen under the same survey, the vice president still enjoyed a high approval rating of 56. And then disapproval for her is 29. So another way of looking at it is 56 minus 29, it remains to be positive. But if we look at the president, ang approval rating niya is 29. And then yung disapproval is kanang 50. So baliktad sila, di ba? If you look at it, ang number ni sa president sa approval is the number of the vice president sa iya ang disapproval, no? And then ang number sa president sa approval is more or less the number sa vice president sa approval is more or less the number of the president sa iyang disapproval. So 29 minus 50, that's negative, no? So the vice president still enjoys a high approval rating. And the reason why I'm actually curious about the approval rating and even how the vice president also can perform in the voter preference, it's because if we recall, April 22 was also an important day in the House of Representatives. And why did I say so? Because this was the time in which the Justice Committee, katong ila pang gi-ready ang articles of impeachment ba, and then before nila gi-elevate into the general plenary in the House of Representatives for voting whether the Vice President should be impeached, mao ni ang time nga nigawas ang katong iyang mga bank records, financial records, and in the overall, this was the time in which it was alleged that her net worth is way higher than her declared ability to generate such wealth, no, in a nutshell. And we will see that more next week in the hearing. So I thought that would hurt her, but apparently if we look at the trust rating and if we look at her as a preferred presidential candidate, it did not hurt her. No, she remained trusted, and the preference for her, in fact, even became she remains not trusted, sorry, approved by the general public, and the preference for her as a presidential candidate even increased. Now, let's take a look at the next chart, which is mo na ni ang trust. Ganina approval to. Ang kani is trust, no? So, ang next chart, so just in case kanang hopefully dili siya mag-error, but I'll go into it. Even in the trust rating, the Vice President also had 58, no? You're seeing it on screen. And katong ang wala ni trust niya 27. So 58 minus 27, it remains to be positive. While the same pod for the president, sadly, baliktad pod gihapon ang iya, no? Ang trust is 28, ang no trust is 51, so 28 minus 51, it's negative trust. No? So in spite of everything, no, the vice president remains to be trusted, no? So that's how it is. And these are just analysis of the numbers, no, and not cast in stone, but these numbers are also kanang worth looking and worth monitoring leading to the 2028 presidential and national election for that matter. The other thing also that's interesting, but it's not here, even on the preference for the vice presidential candidate for 2028, ang allies gihapon sa Duterte ang preferred, no? Kanang it's the first placer was actually Bongo, and the second placer was kanang Robin Padilla. And ang far third nila is si Senator Bam Aquino, which was at 14%. If I recall it correctly, si Bongo had 27% voter preference, and then Senator Robin Padilla had 21%, if I recall it correctly, but more or less that's the number. And then Senator Bam Aquino is at 14%. No? So even in the vice presidential candidate, those perceived to be allies of the vice president or the Duterte for that matter, also turns out to be the preferred candidate. Nga kung i-combine kay murag, kung isaray mo dagan ni Bongo ug ni Padilla, i-combine nato silang duha, then they would end up with the popularity of the vice president, no? So murag divided lang ang vote. So it would look like that, no, nga kanang walay impact ning mga shifting political alliances. Now, why is this interesting? Because layo pa man sad ang 2028. Next week, na approve naman to nga they will open the financial records, no, of the vice president along with her husband and many other corporations attached to them. I would be very interested on how the House of Representatives, but more importantly the senators, would behave, no, and how the dynamics will look like as the trial also next week, no, will continue, this time on the Article 1, no, of impeachment, which is misuse of the funds, no. So I would be interested, no, to see whether the result of the survey actually will change the dynamics. And on Monday, so the reason why ang schedule next week for the trial is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because on Monday the president will deliver his 5th kanang State of the Nation address. And atuasad da siyang i-monitor, no? And when I say ato, di lang ako, no, but kamusad, because it's interesting because the SONA that he delivered last year, the quotable line at that time is mahiya naman kayo, and he was referring to the flood control, the ghost flood control projects. And I'm interested on what will be his update, no, with one of the strongest remarks, quotable remarks that he did the last time. Kung ni progress ba gyud ang flood control, scandal, investigation after he said those statements. And I'm also interested about what his take also about the economy. And I'm not stating this because I support the president or I don't support the president, but as an everyday Filipino, these are interesting updates to hear. Kumusta na ang atong economy? Kumusta na ang impact to everyday Filipinos like you and like myself? And then, yes, kumusta na pud ang investigation of the flood control? Because I think the answers to that question will eventually tie back to what I just said. No, nga, murag, basin single out lang nato ang isa, but we're not doing exactly the same kanang due diligence with the others that are also implicated with corruption. So, will the result of the Pulse Asia's change the dynamics within the Senate? Let's see. And then if voters are moving in the direction, are the senators also following? That's also something that we will see, no, next week and beyond. So let's continue to be engaged, no? And because that's our participation, because participation, no, kanang we are engaged in the current events so that we would be more empowered when we make our, among the many, no, when we make our choices in 2028, because our power to vote, no, that's one of the strongest force that we have to actually change the course of the country for the better. So the latest Pulse Asia serve real something, no, every politicians should pay attention to, no? It should be something that every politician should pay attention to, no? Public opinion does not always move in step with political alliances. Will these numbers remain a snapshot of public opinion, or will they begin to influence the calculations of those inside the Senate? That's a question only time and the politicians themselves can answer. And by the way, that's also a question that we, the voting and the general public, the everyday Filipinos, the everyday Cebuanos can answer. So I'm DJ Moises, and thank you to Coffee First for supporting conversations that matter. Until next time, let's continue to look deeper and think better, and let's stay engaged. Have a good afternoon and have a good weekend.
It starts with a fresh shot of espresso. Bold, rich, pulled just right. Then comes the milk, steamed smooth, creamy, and balanced. The perfect latte is not rushed. It is crafted, one cup at a time. Your perfect latte is ready. Coffee first, then everything else.